to the training Cope Connect Select. We're going to learn 3 tools today that are going to help us keep children on the healthy path, or if they've strayed off the path, help them get back on that healthy path. But for just a moment, I want us to realize how thankful we need to be for such a supportive community that you have here in Johnston County. Now, why would I say that? Well, 3 organizations have joined together to bring you this program. One of those, of course, is Alliance Health, and then Johnston Collaborative for Families, and finally, Johnston County Schools Health Advisory Council. Not every community is bringing programs like this to support their families. Matter of fact, very few, so a lot to be thankful for. And especially during this time of COVID, it has just made huge changes in all of our lives. So thank you, Johnston County, for being so supportive. All right, we're going to get started with our first tool. Our first tool is called Cope, and when I think of a cope, I think of a level. That's right, just like a regular builder's level. And the reason why I think of a level is because in life can throw us all off balance. Sometimes it throws us off balance this way, we feel worth less, we still feel sad. Sometimes life throws us off this way, where we get kind of an overinflated ego. Either way, we're not very effective. So we want to go through life as balanced as possible, and we want our children to go through life as balanced as possible. A coping skill is then what we do, a habit or something we employ that helps us to regain our balance once we've lost our balance. So I'd like to share with you the most powerful coping skill that I learned in my life, and I learned it when I was only 8 years old. So one day I was at home playing in the yard. My dad pulled in from work, rolled down his window, and he said, "PJ, I'm getting remarried." Remarried? What does that mean? Went to my 12-year-old sister, Kathy, and said, "Kathy, Dad says he's getting remarried. What does that mean?" She said, "Oh, we're getting a new mom." I said, "A new mom? What's a mom?" Now, I had to ask her that because our mother was killed by a drunk driver when I was just 2. Thankfully, Kathy kept all the history and all the memories. And so she went on to tell me what a mom was. And she says, "You know, moms, they're these people that, like, they make you cookies, they take you places, they give you hugs." And I thought about that for a minute, and I said, "Wow, I'll take 2. Yeah. And so later I had to wonder as an adult, you know, why would my new mom, who was a widow herself with 3 children, why would she marry my father, a widower with 6 children? Why would she do that? And so I asked her, I said, "Yo, Mom, why did you marry Dad?" And she said, "Well, the year before your dad proposed to me, a new movie came out, and this is the movie, The Sound of Music." And I don't know if you've seen the movie or not. It's a wonderful movie if you've never seen it. Now, I'm not a singer, but we're here to have fun. When we're laughing, we're learning. And so you can laugh at me in your privacy of your homes as I sing just the first part of this. And it says, "The hills are alive with the sound of music." And then the little angel voices come in and go, "Ah." So I'm thinking now, why would my new mom think that if she brought together, you know, 2 families, it's going to be The Sound of Music? Well, what we have in this slide, as you can see, Captain Von Trapp and his 7 children, and then Maria becomes the new mom, and it's The Sound of Music. So look here. Here we have the Von Trapp family, Captain Von Trapp, Maria, the 7 children, all singing beautifully and harmoniously. And then we have my new family. So there's my dad and the 9 kids. I'm the youngest girl in the little pink dress there. But you know, if you look at them, okay, well, there's some similarity. But I have to ask you, do you think when our blended family came together that it was The Sound of Music? Now, when I do this presentation live, you know, people's hands shoot up because blended families are pretty common nowadays. And a lot of times, at least initially, and sometimes for many years, it's a sound of chaos, conflict. So what was it like in our house, and why was it? That was actually our experience. It was chaos and conflict. So why? Well, my dad's a very passive guy. And when my mom passed away, he brought in his sister, just like him, a very passive woman. And so we were kind of raised like wild ponies, let on the loose. We used to wade in the swamps. We used to climb the trees. I was allowed at age 3 or 4 to walk 2 miles to the grocery store with my siblings, which were just, you know, you see we're stair-stepped, and unsupervised. We'd be going through the ditches, picking up penny pop bottles, get to the grocery store, turn it in for penny candy. We were allowed to ride our bikes on a busy road. We were just let on the loose. Now, all the people in the world that my dad could choose to marry, who do you think he chose? An exact opposite to our biological mother and to himself. And so he chose someone who had rules for everything. I mean, the minute they got married, it's like you're in the army now. So there was rules on how to wear your clothes, how to talk, how to eat, how to sleep, like everything. Well, after about 3 months, I went to my dad and I said, Dad, you got to do something with your new wife. He's like, what do you mean? I said, I'm used to being a pretty good kid and I just can't make her happy. And we got to talk. So we actually arranged an appointment, if you can imagine this, in our family living room, which was not a living room because you couldn't go in there as a kid unless you were invited in. But apparently everybody cleared the house. No one else was around. My dad and I went into the living room. He sat in a chair. I sat on a sofa across from him. And he said, okay, PJ, what's the problem? I said, your new wife. I just can't make her happy. I'm in trouble all the time, and I don't like that. And so he said, well, like, what's going on? And I said, she says I talk too loud. She says I run in and out of the house too much. She won't even let me burp, Dad. Burp. My dad says to me, PJ, in 10 years, you're going to be 18 years old. You're going to be in your own house. You're going to be in your own apartment. You're going to be going to college. You're going to be living your own life. I'm still going to be here with my new wife. I'm not letting anyone or anything come between me and my new wife. And I remember I was devastated because my dad had always been there for me. And I remember I flung myself back against the sofa cushion and I felt like a little candle that was flickering and my flame was about to go out. And a tear came trickling out of my eye and I said, but Dad, she's being mean to me. And it was then that my dad uttered the most powerful words that I had ever heard to date. And what he said was, Patty Jo, I can't change her. You can't change her. You can't change other people, so you better change yourself. Now, at first, I thought my dad's words were a cop-out, like, you just don't want to help me. But then I got to thinking about what he said because I knew my dad loved me and I knew he never lied to me. So I thought, well, could this be true? So I thought, well, Dad now has to feed 11 people. He has to go to work. He can't stay home and follow around the house and say, that's wrong, this is wrong. And then I looked at myself and I thought, I'm a puny little 8-year-old. There's no way I can change her. So how could I change myself? And what I realized is that I began to study her moods and her behaviors. And what I came to realize is that even though I couldn't change anything about her, I could, if I wanted to, choose a respectful response or action every time if I wanted to make that choice. That gave me personal power. That gave me a way that when I was feeling off because of something she said, I knew how to balance myself. What my dad gave me in those few words, and you notice he didn't give me a lecture, in those few words, what my dad gave me was the best coping skill I've ever had, and he gave his 8-year-old daughter personal power. Now, isn't that what we want for our children, is for them to have personal power? When we're not with them, they have the power within themselves. So I want to now let you know, again, establishing some common ground here. I was not a perfect parent. There are no perfect parents. And just to, for the fun of it, I'm going to share with you the biggest blooper that I made as a parent. I was an I'll fix it parent. So my daughter would say, my best friend's not talking to me anymore. It's like, oh, don't worry, I'll step in. Hey, Mary, what's going on? And my son would come in and say, Dad's being mean to me. I say, don't worry, I'll talk to your dad. Honey, what's going on? You know why? And so my youngest son would say, Mom, my teacher doesn't like me. And I say, hey, don't worry, I'll go talk to your teacher. So I was a fix-it parent. Now, what is the problem with that? I am robbing my child of their own personal power, the very thing that I valued. Why do we do things like that in life? I don't know. What I did a few years ago, High Point University, which is a beautiful university, is right in my backyard. And so I went over there one day and talked to one of the professionals over there and said, if you could offer parents just one tip, because you have seen thousands of students come in and see them over a 4-year time period. Some struggle, some succeed, some drop out, some graduate with honors. If you could only give parents one tip, What tip would you give them? Now it's on your screen. Get it down, and don't write, you don't have to write it down, but the point is really try to embrace this. His advice was allow your kids to work through their own problems. Coach them, but do not fix it for them. Let them reap their own consequences, good or bad. Let them learn from their own mistakes and to stand up for themselves. Do you see the common theme there? Ownership, ownership. Let them own it, let them solve it, let it be their success. So what we're going to talk today is how to be an effective parent. But first, I'm curious as to how you see yourselves as parents. And so Becky, if we can put up poll number 1. Okay, and I show that we have 100% of the parents saying that they actually, we can go ahead and take that down. 100% of the parents saying that they make mistakes. I thought maybe we'd have a jokester in there that said they were a perfect parent, but we didn't, so that's okay. Well, then what we're talking about is how to be an effective parent. So how do we be effective? Well, to be effective, we need to do 3 things as a parent. Number 1, we need to make a conscious choice to accept responsibility to nurture or grow and to protect our children. Number 2, we need to gather the tools because we weren't born with them, we didn't come with an owner's manual, and we actually have to make a conscious effort to gather parenting tools such as you're doing today. Today you'll come away with 3. And the other thing we have to do is lead by example. So we can't just say, I want you to do this, but I'm not going to do it. And the only part of this I'm really helping you with today is 3 tools. The other 2 things you'll need to go ahead and do on your own. Okay, so our first tool again is cope. And why? Because life throws us all off balance every day, many times a day. What we do to balance ourselves is called a coping skill. And we operate most effectively when we are balanced. Now we're going to have a whiteboard animation just to show why it's so important for parents to make sure that they've helped their child become balanced emotionally before offering a solution.
Mary has a problem. She needs help. 3 people offered her good solutions. However, Mary's feeling sad and worthless. No matter how good the solutions are, she just can't see them. Mary first needs to use a coping skill to get her to regain her balance. Now she can face her problems and she can see the solutions. Interestingly, Mary's friend Bob has the same problem as Mary. He needs help. But instead of feeling worthless, Bob feels proud, superior, and egotistical. Uh-oh. Bob can't see the problem or the solution. Bob needs to use a coping skill to help him become level-headed. When we're out of balance, either way, it makes life hard for us. Always remember, we are most effective when we're balanced.
Okay, let's take a moment and flesh this out. Before Mary copes, when she's feeling out of balance, this is a key learning point. We really have to convince ourselves of this. We really have to see this for ourselves. And oftentimes our outer self, our literal body, gives very strong clues as to what's going on with our inner self. So we see here, Mary's out of balance. And can we see how it is out of her range of mental or emotional vision to see any solutions, no matter how good those solutions are, until she becomes balanced, she is not going to be able to see those solutions. After she becomes balanced, literally when someone becomes balanced, their eyes shift and their inner eyes also shift. Now she can see the 3 solutions, and then she can make her choice as to which solution she wants to employ. Using the same analogy, again, when we're out of balance, when our ego is overinflated, when people are egotistical, isn't often their nose in the air, they're kind of looking upward. Bob here, before he gets balanced, He can't see the problem or the solutions. I tell parents, don't unleash another egomaniac on the world. So our job is not to shame our children, and it's not to overinflame them. Our job and their job in life is going to be so much easier if we can all learn how to balance ourselves before attempting to help others or to solve problems. You notice here, once he becomes balanced, he can see the problem and he can see the solutions. Now he's in a position to make a change. So we want to remember, we are when we're most balanced, we're most effective, and coping skills are the habits or the things that we do to get ourselves balanced. Now let's take a real life example. Your child's having trouble with math. That's probably 50% of all children in the world. And so what do? Well, as a good parent, you do a little research and you find some good solutions for your child. Now, don't worry, there's a free PDF that's going to be emailed to everybody, and so don't worry about taking any notes. Everything's already written for you. So there's something that's called coolmathgames.com, free. KhanAcademy.com, oh my goodness, good for elementary kids, middle school, high school, college, on sciences, math, wonderful free program that you can access. You can hire a tutor either for trade or for money. My son will wash your car once a week if you give him some math lessons. Supervised homework. A lot of times when children are having trouble with math, why is that? They're not practicing. Math takes practice. And if we're not doing our homework, we're definitely not going to do well on our tests. So there's 4 good solutions. But let's say that before our child even comes home, so we've known this, we told our child we're going to address this when they get home today. But at school, kids insult them. Now, so your child goes to school balanced, and then kids say, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid. Well, these are the 3 most common and hurtful insults that young people hear. Now, your child's at school, and you want your child to know how to have some coping skills to get themselves balanced right at school. Why blow an entire school day because we're feeling off balance because of something someone said to us or something that happened? So we want to give our children some skills they can use with or without us. Now, the first coping skill we see there is a cell phone. And actually, one of the #1 coping skills universally is talk to someone about your problem. So they can call us. They can call their buddy. And what happens when we're talking? You can't believe what so-and-so said. They said that to you. They don't know anything. Yes, and then I did this. And we get unwound, and our friends help us to balance. Another thing, science says that pets, cats and dogs, or whatever other pets you have, help us to balance. Actually, when we're petting our pet, playing with our pet, our heart rate's going down, we're getting calmer. We cannot take our pets to school, but what can we take? We can take a picture of our pets. This is my pet baby dog. And so actually, if I'm at school and I'm feeling out of sorts, if I actually visually look at my pet, I get, oh yeah, baby dog loves me. They may not love me, but baby dog loves me, baby dog knows me. And we can actually calm ourselves down just with a picture of our pet. Another coping skill, and this again is in your handout, 4-4-4-4 breathing technique. So we all realize that Navy SEALs, firefighters, policemen, emergency rescue workers, they're just people just like us. Sometimes things happen that get them off balance. They have a job to do. They have to figure out quickly, how can I get myself balanced and focused on what I need to do and do my best? So they use this technique. We're going to go through it one time. You can also Google it, and it's also in your handout. And it's called the 4-4-4-4 breathing technique. So the first thing you do is to the count of 4, through your nostrils, you're breathing out. Hold it for 4 counts, empty. Breathe in. Hold it for 4 counts. Breathe out. Sometimes our rescue workers do this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And by breathing and by focusing on counting, their emotions are allowed to dissipate and they become balanced. Wonderful technique because you always have your breath, you always have your counting, and so you don't need any other tools to employ this. Another thing we can do is music. Now, we can't often in a public setting at work, at school, we can't actually listen to our music, but most of us have recorded permanently in our hearts and minds our favorite songs that balance us, that make us feel hopeful again. So we can hum within our minds a song that kind of rights our boat and gets us balanced. Another thing, we can teach ourselves positive self-talk and tell ourselves the truth. And here's the truth we all need to remember. I'm no better than you, and you're no better than me. That is a truth. We may be different, but you're no better than me, and I'm no better than you. So when someone says an insult to me, and I start to take it to heart, I have to tell myself, wait a minute, you're no better than me, and I'm no better than you. And we can get ourselves balanced very quickly. Now, before we can bring this home, let's take a look at flattering our student. Because again, we can't really solve a problem with our child if they have an inflated ego. So what are 3 things? We send our child to school balanced. They hear 3 things that cause them, their ego to inflate. You're smart. Whoa, you're good looking. You are such a cool athlete. All of a sudden our child's inflated again. They can't see the problem or the solution. And so what we want to do is give them ways to balance themselves and also explain to them that they are most effective when they're balanced. Okay, so how can we balance an ego-prone student or child? And so some kids, it seems like they just come out of the womb thinking they're all that. I'm really wonderful. Wow, I'm smarter than everybody else. I love myself. I love life. And they walk around like this. We didn't ask for this child to be born this way. They didn't ask for them to be born that way, but they seem to be prone that way. So how can we get them to be balanced? Because we now know we are hurting them and hurting our ability to parent them by allowing them or encouraging them to stay in an inflated viewpoint. So how can we get them balanced? Well, think of the human body and explain to them the body of humankind is like a literal human body. Everybody has a place, everybody belongs. And we operate most effectively when we know our place and when we cooperate with the rest of the body. So let's just say that you really are, you're the pointer finger, but not just a pointer finger, you are the biggest, best, strongest pointer finger in the world. But when we think about it, what can one finger do all by itself? Can't pick up a cup? Can't make a beautiful painting? What can one, even the best, pointer finger do all by itself? Now, if that pointer finger could learn to work with the other fingers and the thumbs, oh my word, they could learn to play beautiful music. They could dunk a basketball. They could create a sculpture, a skyscraper that reached into the skies. So son, daughter, the magic, the power is in learning to work along with the rest of the body. So if you really want to be special, learn to work along with other people better than anyone else. Can you see how that might help them to balance themselves and to see how really it's an advantage to be balanced and cooperative? Now, equally and sometimes perhaps more difficult is to help to balance a child who seems to be prone to low self-esteem. They feel worth less. And a lot of times we'll see this child, their shoulders are kind of slumped forward. They tend to shuffle sometimes, and I'm worth less. Nobody likes me. What's the matter with me? And they just kind of come out of the chute this way. So we're, some people are prone different ways, but we now know that to allow a child to remain in a position of low self-esteem, feeling worth less, is hurting their chances of succeeding just as a person, but also it's harming our abilities to parent them. So what can we do to help them? Well, again, have them look at the human body and tell them everybody has a place. Everybody's here for a reason. We might not figure out our place, initially, but hopefully as we continue to grow, we figure out who we are, why we're here, what our role is. Now, look at your body. What are 2 organs that you cannot live without? So they're critical to your existence. 2 organs or 2 parts of your body. For instance, if someone cuts off your hand, you can live without a hand. Someone pokes out your eye, you can live without an eye. But there are a couple of things that if those are gone, you can't live. And they very likely will say, well, my heart, and my brain. It's like, yes. Now, when is the last time without the aid of technology that you have ever seen your heart or your brain? And it's like, oh, never. I'd be dead if I saw my heart or my brain. Yes, because they're inside of us. So maybe, just maybe, you are the heart. Maybe you are one of those critical support people in life that we never see. Of course they're not on the big screen. Of course they're not on the stage. No, maybe you are the heart. Think about that. Can you see how that can help them to see that it's okay to be who they are, and they may be one of those internal support people? Now, it's a very, very important tip. Warning, warning, parents. If we really believe that the body of humankind is like a literal human body, then we would never, never, never say to our child, why aren't you more like your brother? Why aren't you more like the captain of your basketball team? Why aren't you more like, and it doesn't matter who we put in there, because you know what? That's not who they are. And if we are telling them that they need to find out who they are and that it's okay to be different from everyone else, which is the truth, then we never want to confuse them by comparing them to any other person. Now, kids know how they cope. I happen to poll my grandchildren, and you see the one on music there, I polled my teenage grandson, and I said, now when you mess up or lose something and you're feeling bad, what do you do to balance yourself? He says, oh, I know exactly what I do. I listen to music. Now, listening to music, poll number one, Becky, is that a healthy or an unhealthy coping technique? Okay, we have, our poll says 100% healthy. Okay, so I'm going to just do away with that for a minute. Okay, now let's think about that. Is that true? Really, it depends. This is what we want to think about. If my grandson, when he's feeling bad, listens to music that is calming and that rights his boat, that's a healthy coping technique. But if he listens to music that makes him feel angry and mad and depressed, then it's not a healthy coping technique. So all music isn't the same. So what kind of music makes the difference? Let's go now. You see the young man with his fist. Okay, my 12-year-old grandson. I said, what do you do when you feel bad, you mess up, you lose something? What do you do to feel better? Instantly, I hit somebody. He tells the truth. He does hit somebody. At that age, he did. And I said, why would you hit somebody? And he said, because, Nana, when I am feeling angry and I'm feeling hurt and I hit somebody and then they feel bad, I feel better. Now, is that true? It's true. But again, the poll, is that a healthy or an unhealthy coping technique? Okay, 100% say unhealthy, because you know what? It never depends. It's never okay to hit somebody. It's never okay to hurt someone so we feel better. It took years to get him to develop many other coping techniques, because just right out of the chute, he was a hitter and he had to learn a new way. And it took time, but he eventually, I won't say he outgrew it. He outlearned it and learned a better way. Now, his 8-year-old sister, you see the bookworm there, I said to her, what do you do when you feel bad or you lose something? You know, what do you do to feel better? And immediately she said, I read a book. And I said, why do you read a book? She said, it takes me to a different place. I thought, wow, how profound for an 8-year-old. And isn't it interesting that everybody knows what they do? Now, again, healthy or unhealthy? Okay, 100%. And I apologize, I didn't give everybody a chance to vote, but we'll thank you for your efforts. Okay, now, again, I didn't put on there it depends, because we tend as people to think of things in black and white. And I wanted you to think the way that we generally, when I do this live, people are either healthy or unhealthy. I've never had someone say it depends in the first couple of times. But if she's reading inappropriate material or material that makes her feel angrier, then reading is not a good coping skill. But if she's reading age-appropriate material and material that balances her, yes. We're not going to poll the last one, but my 6-year-old granddaughter, I asked her, what do you do when you feel bad or mess up to make yourself feel better. And right off the bat, I eat something. And she's telling the absolute truth. A lot of people eat their emotions. When they feel bad, they try to fill themselves up with food and balance themselves. Now, healthy or unhealthy, again, it depends on what she's choosing. If she's eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or an apple or just 2 cookies, it's an okay coping technique. If she's eating a whole bag of cookies, a whole bag of candy, a whole bag of potato chips, or 4 donuts, unhealthy coping technique. In your packet, you're going to receive, there are 20 coping techniques and a way to find 100 more. You can also Google this. All right, so what am I modeling? So as a parent, parents, what are we modeling? So if I come home from work or at the end of the day of being at home, if I'm all stressed out and I open the refrigerator and I pull out a beer or a glass of wine, what am I modeling to my children as my coping technique? Do you know what I'm modeling? Substance use. And in a few years, they may say, hey, you know, what's the difference? My marijuana, my pills, they're your alcohol. So parents, think about this. Save alcohol for things like football games, family dinner, celebrations. And instead, when we're stressed out, model things that our children can imitate, such as calling a friend, #1 coping technique. What about taking the dog for a walk around the block or taking the whole family for a walk around the block? My daughter's a nurse. She comes in the house, it's like, okay, nope, not listening, stay away. She goes right to her room, runs a bubble bath. Lays in her bubble bath for about 15 or 20 minutes, lights her candles, gets all cleaned up, comes out and says, okay, guys, now we can be a family. What is she modeling? A bubble bath as a way to de-stress and detox. So what we want to think about is ways that we can model things that our children can imitate. By the way, the 12-year-old, the hitter, he actually drew these. This is someone going down the runway being a model. Real life example, your child's misbehaving. So this is something we're very familiar with. How can we use the coping tool to help in this situation? A less effective parent is going to say things like this. You're a bad boy. You're going to have a rotten life if you keep acting like this. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Do you know you act like a 2-year-old? What is this mom doing? She's instilling negative emotions. She is right away taking the child and lowering their self-esteem. So how effective is she going to be in actually solving the problem? A more effective parent instills positive emotions. So even when our child's misbehaving, we can go up to our child and say, I really like you. I want you to do well, and I want you to feel good about yourself. And I hate to see you in this situation. What's going on? See how different that is? So how do you feel? Now, they may say, they may be kind of arrogant, they may be kind of angry and say, I don't have a problem, it's everyone else that has a problem. We, of course, have to help them to balance. And sometimes there's a little time in between these steps. But if ever your child's feeling angry, that means they really don't know how they're feeling. And if you can ask them one question and say, you know what, we can wait to talk about this, but just answer me this one question. Are you feeling sad or anxious or afraid right now? And if you can get them to verbalize sad, anxious, or afraid, all of a sudden, that's something they understand and they can begin to process and de-escalate. It comes unwanted and becomes something they can actually deal with. Now, in our next approach, we want to, and even if they're say, you know, there's nothing wrong with me, again, a lot of times bringing them to honesty. Listen, nobody likes feeling like you're feeling. Nobody likes acting like you're acting right now. No one likes messing up. What's going on? And then listen and help them battle their negative emotions. Then you want to select a coping technique. And I have 3 down here. One is visualize. And visualize is simply this. You're helping them to project into the future when they've solved this problem that's, you know, obviously frustrating them. So visualizing is, listen, I know you're going to figure this thing out. You've got this thing. And when you do, you're going to feel so much better. And then you're going to be able to move on to that next step. Another coping technique, you know what, just put everything down. Let's just go take a walk. I don't want to take a walk. No, let's go take a walk. Let's walk this off. We're not even, I promise we're not going to talk about this on the walk. We're simply going to go outside and we're going to take a walk. Or see if you can get them to smile. We're going to look at the power of a smile in just a minute. It's really important, just like Dr. Don Scarborough, High Point University, make sure they know they own the problem. If I don't own a problem, I can't fix the problem. So make sure they own the problem and then find a solution. And you can ask them, people have been having this problem since people have been on Earth. So what do other kids do? What do other people do when they have this problem? Let's figure out, let's find some solutions, find something that you want to try to see if you can get it to work. And then do enforce a consequence. Misbehaving needs a consequence. So number one, if they've misbehaved and said some things in a tone or an attitude or words that are inappropriate, they need to apologize. If they've thrown papers on the floor or spilled something, they need to clean it up. And maybe even another consequence of, listen, you've taken time away from my things that I needed to be doing, and so now I need you to do something for me. See that window over there with the fly spots on it? Here's the Windex, here's the paper towel. I need you to clean that window. Now, make sure that make sure they know when you have worked through this problem and they have actually accepted their consequence, make sure they know we're cool. I'm not going to bring this up again, not holding it against you. We are cool. If they're of an age where they will accept a hug, give them a hug. If they want to accept a physical hug, give them a verbal hug. I really do like you and you're going to do just fine. You're going to make one cool adult. Now, where do we need to put the level first? On our own heads. So when our children misbehave, we sometimes feel embarrassed. We feel sad. We feel angry. And we need first to get ourselves balanced. Why is that? Because that's when we are most effective. And one question we can ask ourselves, do I want to punish my child? Or do I actually want to help my child work through this and develop more skills on their way to adulthood? Good question. So first, put the balance on our own head. Why get them to smile? Science says that when I smile, fake or real, okay, everybody smile, okay? If I smile, fake or real, it thins out these facial bones here in the front of the face. It increases blood flow to the frontal lobe and automatically releases some dopamine. I will feel better. Now, I remember when I was a kid, sometimes I'd want to be mad and someone could get me to smile. And I'd try to get myself not to smile, but you know what? Too late. The chemical release has already happened. I'm already prone to feeling better and getting myself balanced. If ever you can get someone to smile, they're on their way to recovery. We're going to go ahead and put this tool in our toolbox. Our tool is, again, cope. When we help our children cope, we give them a chance to rewrite their script about us as their parents, that we really do care. We are helping them cope. Children sometimes develop this script. We may not even be aware of it, or maybe we are. The old script, parents are people that yell at you. My parents don't care about me. I don't care about my parents. Pretty difficult to influence their lives when that's the script running in their mind. But as we help them cope, they can change their script and say, wow, my parents help me cope. My parent cares about me. I care about my parent. Okay, our next tool we're going to look at is connect. And when we think of connect, I think of C-clips. And the reason I think of C-clips is because they're easily connected, yes, and easily disconnected. And relationships, sometimes we think we're close and we're connected and we drift, and sometimes we are connected. When we are connected, when someone feels connected to us, they feel like we know them, we understand them, and we respect them. That's the feeling of connection. And when we feel connected to someone, when a child feels connected to a parent, a caregiver, they tend to follow their solutions. They tend to follow their guidance because they feel connected. Now, it's interesting that we all want to connect to our children, obviously, but every child is not as easy to connect to as the other. So I had my 3 youngest grandchildren draw self-portraits of themselves as chickens. And it's important to realize every child really is different. We have to respect their differences. In this case, my 12-year-old grandchild, the one who like to hit. He loved this game called Minecraft. It's actually a very wholesome, beautiful game. You make things, you dig for diamonds. And in this case, he has himself playing his game, digging for diamonds. You see he has his diamond drilling tool in his hand. He's got a diamond in his hand, big ones, and big diamonds by his feet, their power, their wealth. And it's such a good portrait because this kid is power hungry. And so he's the kind of kid that's always battling his mom for power, battling his dad for power, battling his teachers for power, battling his nana for power. Like everybody he comes into contact with, he's trying to figure out how to rob them of their power. How easy is it to connect with a child like that? Very difficult. So just realize that some children, the way they're born and their particular attributes, they can be difficult to connect with. Now, his sister, the bookworm, again, every child's different. She drew herself as this perfectly balanced, has on her cool shades, bright, happy. That's her. It really is. So she's the kind of kid that at school, if someone drops something, hey, let me pick that up for you. Teacher, hey, teacher, can I empty the trash can? Is there anything I can do for you at home? Mom, can I help do the dishes? How easy is it to connect with a child like that? Easy. She connects with everybody, school, teachers, neighbors, family. Every child's different. What about her little sister, the one who likes to eat? Again, a very good self-portrait because on the one hand, she looks balanced and bright, but do you notice under her wings, rocket boosters and one combat boot? Yeah, this little girl, a little bit like her brother, not so much after power, but it's I want it my way. I'm going to do what it takes to get my way. Yeah, and so she again is one that's more difficult to connect with. We have to know the differences and respect the differences. There's another obstacle to our parent-child connection. And what is that? Let's take a look at this whiteboard demonstration here.
Why is it so hard to connect with our children? Simply put, stuff gets in the way. We have jobs. Technology grabs our attention and theirs, and fear may hold us back. Try this. We have to keep our jobs. However, can we work less overtime? Can we take an occasional personal day to focus on family? Technology. Set limits for yourself and your children. Try no phones during mealtime. No screen time after 9 p.m. Give it a rest. In some families, all phones and devices are turned in and locked down at bedtime. What about fear? Sometimes parents are afraid to talk about the tough stuff: dating, curfews, drugs, gangs, and alcohol. Feel the fear and talk about it anyways. Courageous conversations actually draw us closer to our children. Parents, identify, regulate, and overcome the obstacles blocking your relationships. Make a better connection with your child today.
Okay, let's flesh that out a little bit. Our jobs. We can't quit our jobs. We've got a family to feed. But sometimes we're working more overtime than we maybe need to. And maybe we can cut back on some of our luxuries and actually get ourselves down to a 5-day-a-week work week. Also, another suggestion in there. When our child or our teen goes through an especially hard time, so maybe a big disappointment, and they're feeling really low, think of the investment we make in our relationship. If we say, tomorrow, I'm taking a personal day for half a day, and it's just you and me. I'm getting babysitters for your siblings, just you and me. We are going to spend a day together. Think of the investment it makes in our child. And we may only do that once a year, and yet it can mean so much in bonding, in connecting and saying, wow, I am important to mom or dad or nana or whoever our caregiver is. Another thing, technology. Let's go ahead and put up the poll. Thank you, Becky. So technology, is it helpful, harmful, or both? Oh my goodness, we have educated parents here, 100% say both. And that is absolutely true. So let's take a look. Technology, is it a friend or a foe? Yes, it's fun. Yes, it's engaging. Yes, you can actually build skills. Yes, it keeps our children occupied, and it is addicting, yes. But is it a thief? Is it sometimes robbing ourselves or our children of sleep? Is it robbing them of physical activity? Our bodies are designed to move and to be active. Is it robbing them of their verbal communication skills? Because I know police officers that I work with say that's their number one fear. Young people don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to express themselves in a balanced way. Is it robbing us of bonding time with our family? Is it robbing us, or especially our children, of work ethic? Actually having chores and things they're doing that they're responsible for with accountability. Is it robbing them of success in real life? So yes, they may be the biggest and the best on their video games. How are they doing in real life? Is it robbing them of real life skills? So it was recommended in our whiteboard, mealtime, no technology. Mealtime is golden opportunity, and we're going to get into that later in the presentation of why would mealtime be so special. But no technology is very important during mealtime, and that means for everyone, and that means at every age. Teenagers, adults, doesn't matter. We have pick a cutoff time, and again, usually about an hour before people are going to turn in, they recommend, no screen time, and have a little family time. Social media, danger, danger. I want to read you out of my book here is included a study of how dangerous social media is. It says one study found that teens who daily spend time on social media, Facebook, MySpace, and the other social media sites, are twice as likely to use marijuana as teens who don't typically spend time on such sites. Teens who have seen pictures of kids drunk, using drugs, or passed out on these sites are 4 times likelier to use marijuana and other drugs, and 3 times likelier to use alcohol. Now, parents, pay attention to this one. Interestingly, 90% of polled parents do not think that their teens visiting these sites will increase the likelihood of drug or alcohol abuse. They do. So social media sites, especially if they're visited more than once a day, are very dangerous. Some of our teens are living on these sites. And then lastly, the American Association of Pediatrics recommended, number 1, no screens in the bedrooms, period. And number 2, at bedtime, take all the screens and lock them in the room of an adult. That goes for teenagers too. Why? Because nighttime, bedtime is time to be sleeping, letting our body refresh and repair. Teens sometimes might balk at this and say, what, you don't trust me? It's like, no, this is called being a good parent. This is called accountability. This is trusting me to do the right thing. Of course I trust you. And then parents do it anyways. Okay, why is connecting with our kids so important? Well, research says that young people with unsolved problems, they're in pain. And if they take all the unresolved problems that teenagers have or young people have, even younger children, they take all of the unresolved problems, they boil down to one thing: an unresolved relationship with one or both parents. And when children have an unresolved relationship with one or both biological parents, whether they're living, dead, met them, live with them, never lived with them, doesn't matter. If they have an unresolved relationship, they're at risk for self-destructive behaviors, things like early sex, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, suicide, gangs, violence, all those things we don't want, all those things we call off the healthy path. So what can we do? Well, number 1, educate your children. It's important for our children and even ourselves to know most children in America today live with only one or no biological parent in the home. So our child is now the exception to the rule if they're living with both biological parents. And if a child is living with one or no biological parents in the home, that child needs to know for sure it's not your fault. Child, it is not your fault. It is never the child's fault when they're not living with both biological parents. Now, how can we help them resolve their relationship with the parent? And even they can have an unresolved relationship with a parent when they're living with both biological parents. So it doesn't matter. We need to help them have a resolved relationship. How do we do that? A resolved relationship doesn't mean you've changed anything about the other person. It only means we've adjusted our own viewpoint to be resolved. Resolved means I've decided that I'm okay with the relationship just like it is. And so our child can reason through, okay, dad made his choices. He decided not to live here. So he's missing watching us grow up and watching our lives. Okay, so dad has his consequences. I can't change him. He did the best he could. Now, I used to kind of fight against this concept, but I was talking to my wise dad, and he said, Patty Jo, people are always doing the best they can at any given moment. So at any given moment, we don't know how someone's feeling. We don't know what input they have in their lives, and they're always making what they feel is their best decision. When they get new input, when they feel better, when circumstances change, they very likely will make a different choice. But at any given point, people are doing the best they can. And so if that's the best, we can't expect anything more of them. Now, sometimes kids will say, my dad never visits me, he never pays child support, my dad died, I was abandoned, my mom left me. They have all these things that they hold against their one parent that they have not resolved their relationship with, or possibly both parents. Sometimes we have to look, well, what is the one good thing that your parent gave you? Ah, yes, the gift of life. I wouldn't be here without that parent. If the only thing your parent could give you was the gift of life, isn't life precious? So if we can learn to forgive everything else, let it go, be okay with the only thing I got from my parent was the gift of life, but hey, I can take it from here. My life from here on out is a result of my choices. I'm thankful. I'm okay with the fact that the only good thing my dad or my mom did for me was give me the gift of life. When we can be okay with it, we will feel a shift within our world. So we want to get into an okay relationship with both biological parents. Research says the number one reason kids give for not using drugs or engaging in underage drinking or any of that other self-destructive behavior we listed is they don't want to harm the relationship with the caring adult in their lives, which is usually a mother or a father, but it can be a nana, a coach, a neighbor, a preacher. It can be lots of different people, but that's the number one reason. So we want to be sure that we have our most connected, caring relationship, because it's going to make our job of keeping our children on that drug-free path so much easier. So parents, caregivers, you have power. Again, if you're looking for an insurance policy against drug abuse, alcohol abuse, suicide, gangs, runaways, early sex, our best insurance policy is to be as well connected as possible with your child and to help your child resolve their relationship with each biological parent. And this can be accomplished whether they're living, dead, they've ever met them, they still live with them, doesn't matter. It's a way of adjusting the child's own viewpoint, not changing the other person. Now, sometimes if we try to connect with our child, and we try and try and try, and we are really putting forth all our effort, and we just cannot connect with our child, there's probably something in the way that's beyond our scope. And so what we need to do is get professional help. It may take only one visit or two visits or 5 visits, but if it resolves the problem and all of a sudden my child and I are connected, that's worth its weight in gold. Now, I'm going to tell you a true story. I have 3 children. 2 of them were born with pretty decent teeth, and my 3rd child was born with teeth going every which way. So poll number 4, was it my fault that my child got crooked teeth, has crooked teeth? I see some of the, this is interesting. People are changing their votes. So first it was 100% no, and now it's maybe 13% yes, and 88% no. Okay, so here's the truth of the matter. Whether it was my fault or not, now crooked teeth doesn't happen to run on my side of the family, so, but it's still, you know, who knows, but whether it was my fault or not, And I'm saying, probably not my fault, but I'm still the parent. So what is my parent's job? To nurture and protect. And if it's within my means to solve this problem for my child, then this is something I can solve. If not, if it's not within my means, my child can solve this problem when they get older themselves. But I decided that I was responsible as the parent and I had the means. Now, I could have decided, I could have taken my son and said, come on into the kitchen, sit down in the chair. I'm going to get some wires and pliers because clearly, look, your teeth are crooked. We need to get them straight. And I could have wrapped his teeth up and tried to straighten his teeth. But I'm like, above my pay grade, I need professional help. So I did get professional help. 3 years later, he's got the most beautiful smile in the family. Point being, get professional help if you if you're at your wit's end, get professional help. It will make your job so much easier from here on out. If you cannot connect with your child, get some help. Okay. So what am I modeling? Now this is interesting because my question to you parents is, what are you saying about your own parents? Because you see, life is an ongoing storyline, an intergenerational storyline. And if you're saying things to your children like, you know, my mom was so mean, my dad was a drunk, my mom was so lazy, what you are doing is setting up a storyline in your family that we're disconnected. Parents and children don't really end up getting along in our family. So what can you do? Get your own stuff straight, parents. And your own stuff straight doesn't mean changing your parents. What it means is changing your story. And so what you need to do is talk to your child and say, you know how I've complained for years about my dad or my mom? And it's like, yeah, well, you know what? It wasn't true. You know, it was just hurt feelings and I was just focusing on the negative. But you want to know the truth about my parents? They did the best they could. You know, my mom, we had dinner on the table. We were fed. My dad, yes, he drank a bit. But you know what? We always had a roof over our heads. Rewrite your script. When you rewrite your own script, your own life will shift and you'll be in a better position to parent. Now we're going to look at a real life example where mom and dad split. And it's not that we're picking on dads because I think nowadays it's about as many moms abandon the families as the dads. But just to keep it simple, we're going to say mom and dad separate and dad's the one who left. And what we're going to see is what some children hear from some parents when this happens. The mom may say, dad doesn't love you. That's why he left. Ooh, your dad's selfish. He's lazy. Your dad's a drug addict. Don't hang around your dad. He's no good for you. What is that parent doing? That parent's instilling negative emotions in a child and really making that child feel worth less, which is making it hard for that parent, that child, to resolve his relationship with each biological parent. What's a better way? Nothing's changed. Same mom, same dad, but now the mom's being an effective parent. She's instilling trust and positive emotions. Dad loves you. We just don't live together anymore. You know, your dad's made some choices that carry some tough consequences. He'll be out of jail in 2 years. Now, when I do this presentation live, the audience will kind of chuckle like, why would you say that? But there are a lot of dads and a lot of moms in jail, in prison. Yes, there are. And instead of putting a lot of emotional judgments on that, you just state a fact. Your dad made a choice that carried some tough consequences, but he'll be back. And then your dad is doing the best he can. Again, I used to differ with this, but I've come to realize that at any given moment, people are doing the best they can. We hope they do better in the future. And then I want you to see your dad, even if dad's in jail or even if dad is considered dangerous. Science says that 95% of the time, we're better off arranging supervised visits. Even if a child only sees their dad for 10 minutes and says, wow, I have a dad, he's real, I just saw him for 10 minutes. It helps them resolve their relationship. And if it's supervised, if there's another adult sitting right there, we don't have to worry about harm. It helps a child resolve their relationship. Now let me ask you this, of these two ways of approach, one parent instilling negative emotions in you, one parent giving you a balanced viewpoint, which way are you going to be most likely to resolve your relationship with your one biological parent? Parents, caregivers, If you don't remember a single thing that we talk about today, remember this one thing. Verbally bashing a child's other parent, using children as weapons, or withholding visitation. Like you see the mom down here saying, we don't need daddy. See, we're just fine without him. If you're doing that, you may be hurting, and maybe not. You may or may not be hurting the child's other parent, but you are always, always, always hurting your child. You are setting your child up for failure. You are making it nearly impossible for your child to do what they need to do for their own emotional health, which is to have a resolved, I'm okay with feelings about each biological parent. Now, in a live presentation, I always get this deer in the headlights, like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been saying stuff like this to my kids for 10 years. What can I do? Well, amazingly, it's pretty easy to fix. Children are very forgiving, but these are the steps you need to take. Rewrite your script. The first thing you need to do is say to your child of any age, this works for a child who's 4, 14, or 44, where mom's been saying things like this, or dad's been saying things like this. So you need to take them aside and say, we need to talk. You didn't do anything wrong. I need to apologize. I am so sorry for bashing your father or your mother and saying mean and hurtful things. And I want you to know right now that what I said is not true. That was my anger. That was my hurt that was talking. The truth is, I really, you got some good things from your father. The truth is, he is an excellent salesman. He is a very honest person. The truth is, you've got his eyes. The truth is, there's a reason why we came together. And you know what? He may not have given me everything I wanted, but because of him, excuse me, you are here in my life, and I am thankful. So can you forgive me? I actually want you to develop a relationship with your dad. I want you to feel good about him. Can you forgive me for all the angry, hurtful things that I've said? And can you help me? If I ever start to say something bad about him, can you say, Mom, you promised? And help me stop doing that, because you know what? It's just not true, and it's just not right. I want you to have an okay relationship with your father. So that's it. That's how simple it is. Apologize. Tell them that it was really your anger. Tell them some good things about their other parent. Ask their forgiveness, and then stop doing it. Okay, there's a big, big payoff to this. Helping our child resolve their relationship with each biological parent and helping them be connected. I'm okay with each biological parent. Again, living, dead, still live with them, never met them, never will meet them, doesn't matter. That's the thing that's going to help ensure that they're going to be healthy and stay on that healthy path. Now, we can connect with anyone, and again, in your free resource, your PDF, which you will be receiving, these steps are listed. So if we want to develop a connection with anybody, and it works at work, in the neighborhood, at church, it works with direct reports, it works with bosses, and of course our children. First thing to connecting with someone is to be visible, be in close proximity. Let them see you. Take a personal interest in them personally. Actually listen to them. Share food. Food is number one bonder in the universe. And the very first person you bonded with in this world, you bonded with food. Yeah, when you were a newborn, you bonded with food. Powerful bonding agent. Touch. Shake hands, pat on the back, high five, hug if allowed. And then I've got two kind of bolded out. Take an interest in their interest. And when you find out what they're interested in, underwater basket weaving, don't know anything about it, Google it. So we have, the whole world is at our fingertips now with computers. And then share feelings. Hey, I heard about this, kind of made me feel this way. How do you feel? And then ask their opinion. I heard this, I started thinking this, what do you think? And we can bond on many levels. And the more levels we bond on, the stronger that connection. We can bond physically, again, through appropriate touch. We can bond mentally through our thinking. We can bond emotionally through our feelings. And we can bond spiritually. And this does not mean religiously. It means really talking about things like love, hope, faith, seeing a better outcome, faith, believing something's going to happen if we keep moving. I want to talk about the one that I had highlighted there on hope, the power of giving our children a rescue, giving our children hope. So there's a scientist, his name is Kurt Richter, Harvard graduate. He did a study at Johns Hopkins University. And what they did is they took a bunch of rats and put them in a tank, and there was nothing for the rats to hang on to. And they wanted to time, well, how long can rats tread water before they go under? And what they found out is that the average rat can tread water for 17 minutes. Now, Kurt here got the idea of, what if we rescued a rat? Wonder what would happen. So they started rescuing the rats as they went under, and they would dry them all off, they'd get them all rested, and then they put them back in the water. So now remember that a regular rat can, so don't boil yet, a regular rat can tread water first time 17 minutes. A rescued rat, how long can it tread water? Take your votes. Oh, this is kind of fun watching this. So right now we're at about 10%, 36 hours. We're 75% 5 hours, 8% 42 hours. Okay, so the winner is 5 hours, excuse me. Okay, so the truth of the matter is they could tread water for 36 hours. How in the world? And what the researchers found out is that whereas they can only go 17 minutes the first time, the second time they put them back in, it would be 17 minutes, 5 hours, I'm so tired, 6 hours, I'm really tired, 30 hours, really tired. But what they kept thinking of, what they kept remembering is, I got rescued. If I just tread water a little longer, I know a rescue is possible. I've experienced that before. Parents, it's important to realize that we don't have to remove our children from their environment. So never feel hopeless yourself if your child is living with someone in your house who you know is not healthy for them. If you're living in a neighborhood that you know is not the best neighborhood, you do not have to remove children from their environment for them to grow up healthy and strong as individuals, as adults. But what you do have to do is give them hope. And one of those hopes is when you see them really struggling, try to get them to smile. Try to invest a little time in them. Let them know that in the future, they're going to be adults and their future is going to be based on their choices. Give them hope. And any child raised in, or children raised in any environment can grow up to be stable, healthy, happy adults. So don't get tied up in the fact that you have to change environment. Change what you can, which is using these 3 tools and also giving your children hope. Now we're going to put connect in our toolbox, and we want to remember that when we really connect with our children, when they really know we care, when our children feel by us, we know them, we care about them, we understand them, we respect them, that's when they're going to follow our influence. That's when they and we have the greatest chances for real change. Okay, we're now at select, our last tool. When you think of select, I want you to think of a channel changer. But first, this is important in our day-to-day life, especially with the COVID going on. Sometimes we just hunker down and we forget what it takes to be healthy. Even on the short term. Now we are going to take just a 1-minute stretch, and I'm watching the time clock, and so I'm going to ask everybody, if you will, if it's convenient, stand up, just stretch a little bit. Oh, okay, and so we might give ourselves some hugs. That's another thing we can do. We might reach a little to the right or the left. We might do some arm circles. What we're doing is we're refocusing our body's energy on the body. We're giving our brain a chance to just rest for a minute, to process everything we've learned about cope and connect. Okay, and I think we are just about there. So if you want to go ahead and resume whatever comfortable position you were in before, we will carry on. It's important to remember this. When our children are doing homework, a 1-minute stretch can make all the difference. If we're doing work at home or at work, even in our chairs, we can stretch. We can take a minute, just notice where our arms are, our legs are, relax our neck a little bit. Okay, we're ready for another poll, and the question is, When does a surfer learn to control a wave? Go ahead. Okay. 80% said never, and never is correct. It was kind of interesting to see the shift. When I'm in a live audience and I don't give people any choices of answers, most people guess when he rides the wave. But the truth of the matter is, as we really think about it, wait a minute, they're never controlling the wave. Sometimes we approach life thinking that we need to control life. We need to control other people. We need to control our work environment. We think we need to control things, and heaven forbid we think we need to control our children. Not true. We can learn a lot from a surfer. What does a surfer do? A surfer watches the waves. And if you watch him out there, he'll go over the waves. He'll go under the waves. He'll go through the waves, trying to understand the waves and find just the right wave. And finally, he'll find one and he will ride it all the way to shore. With our children, we're watching them. They're having problems. They have behavior problems. They're immature, right? They're children. And so a lot of times with our children, we're just going over a problem, under a problem, through a problem. We're trying to understand our child. And every once in a while, we're in the zone with our child and we ride a memory all the way to shore. And we call that a lifetime memory. And that's rare. So parents, we have to get our expectations correct. That parenthood is messy. It can be frustrating. It's not something that we can control, and especially our children. And so we have to realize that most days are going to be a bit of a struggle, but every once in a while we'll have a day that just like, oh my word, everything went like clockwork. We probably write it down. Okay, so when I think of select, I do not call this a remote control because, again, we're not into control, we're into selection. Does my child select behaviors that match the roles they play? What? Does my child select behaviors, appropriate behaviors, that match the roles they play? So does my child know the rules about roles and respect? Wow, there are rules about roles and respect. So that's what we're going to explore here. Now, for instance, in matching the behavior to the role, let's say that my child in this instance is a student in a classroom with a teacher. So does the student need to take charge of the others in the classroom? No. Does my student need to follow the directions of the teacher? Yes. Is it okay for my student to ask questions? Sure. Is it okay for my child, the student, to give commands? No, not the appropriate behavior as a student to a teacher. Should my student show respect for their teacher? Oh, absolutely. Should my child as a student point out the mistakes of their teacher? No, not appropriate behavior. Should my student, the child, point out the successes of the teacher? Hey, that's great. Yeah, that's good behavior. That matches. That'll build the relationship. Should my student, the child, keep their word to their teacher? Absolutely. Okay, now let's see what can change. Now, when my child is an older sibling, and as the parent, I have told my older child, I want you to take your younger sibling by the hand, and I want you to go down here, and I want you to pick this up for me and come back. So I have now given some authority to the older sibling. Is it okay for the older sibling to take charge of their younger sibling? Yes, yes, that's actually what they've been commissioned to do. Is it okay for them to follow my directions? Yes. Is it okay for them to follow the directions of their younger sibling? Well, not if they disagree with mine. Is it okay for the older sibling to ask questions? Yes. Is it okay for the older sibling to give commands to the younger sibling? Well, if they need to, because the older sibling has been given directions and they need to make sure the younger sibling follows those directions. Is it okay for an older sibling to show respect to the younger sibling? Absolutely. Is it okay for the older sibling to point out the mistakes of their younger sibling? Well, as one being in charge, if there are mistakes, if there's some way that they're not following my directions, yes, point them out. Is it okay for the older sibling to choose to point out the successes of their younger sibling? Hey, great bond builder between the siblings, do it. Is it okay for the older sibling to keep his word to the younger sibling? Absolutely. So now we see that when the role of the child changed, their behaviors also needed to change. They needed to select different behaviors. What about this? What if my child is in a peer-to-peer relationship? Is it okay for my child to take charge of others? Well, you know, that's what peers do. They wrestle around, they try to take charge. They can try that. Is it okay for my child to follow the directions of a peer? Well, if they don't go against their own value system and the values of our family, you know, they can follow directions. Is it okay for my child to ask their peer questions? Questions are always good. Is it okay for my child to ask their peer to give them a command? You have to do this. Well, they can try it, see what happens. On peers, we're talking equal authority. Is it okay for my child to show respect to their peers? Actually, that's the one that always is appropriate under all circumstances. We want to show respect to others, those who have authority over us, those who we have authority over, and those who have equal authority. What about my child? Is it okay to point out the mistakes of their peers? Well, young people tend to do that. They can try it, see how that works for building friendships. Is it okay to point out the successes? Everybody loves that. That is a great connector to point out successes of others. And then always, always, always in all relationships, we want to keep our word. Now, again, we're selecting different behaviors depending on our line of authority in relationship to the other person. Selecting appropriate behavior, that's what we're aiming for. And this can make it easier because sometimes people will say, teens especially, why should I change my behavior from one person to the other? I mean, I'm just me all the time. Well, you can be me all the time, but take a look at this. Now you're the same you, but if you go to school with a swimsuit on, what's going to happen? Yes, absolutely. You're going to be kicked out of school because you don't have enough covered. It's not appropriate. And you're going to know very quickly that your wardrobe that you chose is not appropriate. Now, what if you choose to wear formal wear to school? Well, again, probably not appropriate. When my oldest son was in kindergarten, he'd always had his family pictures taken with a tie on. And he said, Mom, I want to wear a tie for picture day. And I said, well, I don't think kids at school wear ties. He says, no, I want to wear a tie. And he insisted. He came home later and it's like, why did you let me wear a tie? It's like, well, because you wanted to. He says, I was the only kid in school all day with a tie. So he was able to realize that type of wardrobe wasn't suitable. And then what about at school? If we wear school clothes, well, we're going to fit right in. Nobody's going to say anything. It's appropriate. We just fit right in. Now, what about the beach? What if at the beach I wear beach wear? I'm going to fit right in. I'm not going to get kicked off the beach. What if I wear formal wear to the beach? Well, if I choose to wear formal wear, people are like, you know, is it your prom? Are you getting married? What's going on here? If I wear school clothes, my friends are going to say, oh, man, why didn't you wear your swimming suit? Now you can't go swimming with us.
I love you. Was written. I will always love you. Was written. Written by. Was.
Okay. And
I'm
then
gonna go ahead and mute. Hang on.
Okay.
Oh, the song.
Yeah.
Susan, can you mute yourself, please?
I had an education.
Okay. And then formal wear. If we wear formal wear, if we're going to a formal party and we wear a swimsuit, you know, we're probably going to get laughed at. If we're going to a formal party and we wear formal clothes, obviously people are going to say, hey, you look nice, you fit right in. And if we wear school clothes to a formal party, people are going to be, oh man, how embarrassing, how awkward. Did I forget to tell you this is formal? And so we're the same person when we wear our swimsuit or our formal wear or our school clothes, but we are able to change according to the activity, what's appropriate. So we can be the same person when we're wearing more respect, or when we're handling more authority, or when we're in a peer group with equal authority. We can choose different behaviors and we're still us. Okay, the home is the best place to learn how to select appropriate behavior. And the sad thing is that today there are family rules, but in a lot of homes, families do not have rules. Now, science says that there are 12 rules, and if you have 10 of these 12 rules in your home, then your children have the greatest success. You're doing your job as a parent, and your children have the greatest chance of success as becoming young adults. Now, we're going to take a poll here because I'm interested to know, and don't bother writing these down, it'll be on your PDF. So you'll get all 12 of the family rules. And so, were you raised in a household with enforced family rules? Okay, very interesting. And so we have about 86% of our viewers were raised in families with enforced family rules, and 14% were not. Now, this has changed today. Today, most children are being raised with few or no family rules. We're going to look at just a couple of these, and Becky's going to help me out here too. We're going to look at the first one: eat dinner, one meal. So it could be dinner, it could be breakfast, but it's basically eating once a day with your family almost every day. And of course, a consequence if a child chooses to miss that. At first, we're going to look at consequences. If parents don't take a little time to develop a lot of consequences, they can get stuck on, you're grounded, go to your room, you lose your phone for an hour. What we can do is have a family night. Get a fishbowl or some kind of a container that we can maybe keep on top of the fridge. Have the family, children included, create a list of various consequences. We can put them each on a piece of paper, fold it up, put it in the fishbowl, stir it up. And so things like wash a window, clean out the family car, bake cookies for the family, 24 hours no screen time, do your brother's chore, wash a wall, play a game with your sister, match socks. Everybody's got a pile of socks that need to be matched. And so you take, for instance, some people say, wait. My child does something bad and they can pull out the consequence of bake cookies for the family. Is that really a punishment? Is that a consequence? Well, don't we all in life, we break the rules sometimes and we have a good consequence come out of it. This is real life. What's the good consequence? I'm late for an appointment, I speed, I don't get a ticket, and I get there early. Wow. So, but if I do that often enough, I'm probably actually going to get pulled over and get a ticket. So bake cookies to the family, yes, it's a fun consequence, but again, they're doing something for the whole family. So it's okay to have some fun things in your consequence bowl. And then when the child breaks one of the rules, say, okay, get the fish bowl, let's stir it up, pull out a consequence. We need consequences or they're not really rules. Now, eating together nearly every day. So Becky, did you eat with your family as a child?
I did.
Okay, and about how often?
Every day. Absolutely.
Okay.
Whether it was both parents or just one parent, we had a nightly meal together.
Okay, perfect. So then you know what this is all about. So was mealtime for you, like your mom got out the scales or your dad, and we have to like make sure that little Becky gets enough protein and enough vegetables and what's her calorie count? Is that what mealtime's about?
Not for us, it wasn't.
Okay, good. Hopefully not for anybody. Yeah. Okay, so what did happen at family mealtime? Like, what's one thing that happened?
We were asked about our day.
Okay.
We talked about things that were happening in the world oftentimes.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Well, really, in talking at the family mealtime, what's happening is coping skills. Because as we talk about our day, for instance, there could be a conversation like the little brother might say, oh man, first day of high school and some kid knocked my books out of my hand and then he was kicking them down the floor and I almost started crying, but I didn't. And then I finally got him picked up and his big sister says, yep, same thing happened to me. So welcome to high school, keep your books in your backpack and never let them see you cry. And then the little brother's like, wow, write a passage. I did it, I never knew. And so we learn to write our boat. Or dad may say, someone at work told a lie about me and I had to chase them. What'd you do, Dad? And so they learn how dad felt bad and then how he solved the problem. So we learn coping skills. What's another thing besides talking at your table that happened?
Well, I was the youngest of 4, so I had food stolen off my plate quite a lot.
Okay. And so we also learn selection. So we learn appropriate behavior. So your parents probably in some way let the other children know this is not appropriate behavior. And other behaviors sometimes when we're growing up will be, most children start out chewing with their mouth open. And so mom and dad will say, hey, select a different behavior, close your mouth. Someday you're going to go on a date and that guy is going to want to be looking at that mess in your mouth. It's like, oh, that's right. And sometimes it's use your napkin. So we get civilized. We learn to select appropriate behavior at our dinner table. And then, of course, the obvious thing, we're sitting in close proximity, passing food. What's that called? Connection. So what we find out is in these 12 rules, the science says if we have them, we're building our best, strongest families. They all use connect, cope, and select in these rules. Okay, let's go on to our next one. And thank you, Becky. Our next one, another one of our 12 rules, regular daily chores. Now, University of Minnesota was trying to find out what was it that made a group of people ultra successful. So they started studying the lives of these people and they thought, well, maybe it's because of their family dynamics. They live with both biological parents. They looked at all the people in the study and they said, no, they don't. Some were adopted, some were abandoned, some do live with both biological parents, some are being raised by their grandmother. And so, nope, that wasn't the common thread. They thought, well, maybe they're people of money. Well, no, some were raised in poverty, some were raised in the upper middle class and the upper class, so that was not a common thread. I thought, well, maybe it's their education. No, some were high school dropouts, some were Harvard graduates, so it's not education. When they sorted through all of the things looking for one big similarity in all of these very successful people, do you know what they found out? The younger they were when they were given regular daily chores with accountability, someone's checking to see if they did it right, the more successful they were in life. So parents, if you bought into the myth that your child's too busy to have regular daily chores, you are hindering your chances of your child's possibilities for success. And so every child should be contributing daily to the home. At 2 years old, they can begin picking up their toys. And at 10, they should be able to do just about everything in the house. So if this is an area where you've been slipping a bit, no, there's big payoff. It actually leads to their success for the rest of their life. When I was young, we had a garden and we fed 11 people. So it was a huge garden. And so before we could go play in the summertime, we actually had to like weed or cultivate a row in the garden. And so I was given, for instance, a row of carrots, like 40 feet long. And so my mom would take me out and she'd say, and so she'd teach me select. It's like Patty Joe, select the appropriate behavior. These are what the weeds look like. These are what the carrots look like. If you pull out the carrots, we're going to have a problem. So I had to really concentrate and select because one time I did get a little upset and I was pulling out way too many carrots and nope, that's not a good appropriate behavior to choose. We also connected because she gave me some direction and she went there with me and she gave me accountability. And then I had to learn to cope because, you know, my friends are riding their bikes, they're swimming in the creek up on the edge of the property, they're laughing, they're having fun, and I'm weeding this crazy garden. And so I'd go out there and I'd be angry. But it's hard to be angry for an hour. And so pretty soon I'd notice a butterfly would kind of fly off, or a ladybug would land, and I'd lighten up and I'd just hunker down and do my work. And I'd be envisioning in my mind, playing a little movie of what I was going to do when I got done. So I learned Cope, Connect, Select. I learned all of these through daily chores. Now, how do I measure up personally as a parent? Science says that if I have 10 of these rules in my house, I'm a hands-on parent. I am well connected to my children. I know what's going on in their lives, and I'm going to have really good success. The odds are in my favor of my children growing up to be responsible, caring adults. If I have only 6 rules, science says I'm half-hearted. That means if I have several children, some of them may be successful, some of them are going to fall off the healthy path. I'm half-hearted, I'm going to get mixed results. If I have 5 or less rules, I am a hands-off parent. And what that means is my child is running his own show and he's running mine too. And so sadly, 70% of families today, so I think on our poll it was about 13%, were raised in hands-off families. Today, 70%, the vast, overwhelming majority of children aren't learning the appropriate behaviors at home. And so it's really hindering their chances for success. A lot of parents who weren't raised with rules, it's like, well, I don't know what rules to have. Now you do. In that free PDF, which you have access to, which will be mailed to you, you have all 10 of the rules, and so you now have access to that. Now we have to ask, what am I modeling? Again, because part of being an effective parent is leading by example. So am I selecting behaviors for my roles? For instance, my boss. Do I come home and say things that are belittling about my boss? Am I pointing out my boss's errors? What am I modeling about my behavior towards authority figures in my life? What about my driving? Am I modeling that, hey, okay, everybody keep their eyes peeled. Let me know if you see an officer. And if you don't, I'm going to break the law. Uh-oh, I'm modeling inappropriate behavior. And then what do I say about my past school experience, about my past teachers? Because if I'm showing disrespect, I'm modeling disrespect for these authority figures, and my child's going to have a much harder time as they choose appropriate behaviors. So something to think about. Okay, real life example. A child steals, and so what are ways of handling it? A less effective parent can ignore it. They can see it and ignore it and refuse to address it. A less effective parent might say, okay, I saw what you did in the store, don't ever do it again. Or a less effective parent can actually insult the store. I did a series on shoplifting, and it's amazing how people really did this. Well, that dumb store, yeah, they don't deserve to have people be honest in it anyways. What can a more effective parent, a really effective parent, what can they do? Clearly explain to your child why it's wrong to steal. We don't like people to steal from us, and so we don't want to be stealing from other people. Go with the teen or child to return the merchandise. Make them own it. Make them fix it. And don't worry about, oh, are they going to have a criminal record? Most storekeepers, if you march your child in there and they apologize and return the product and promise not to do it, those store owners are going to be commending you. They're going to be so happy that you actually became an effective parent and dealt with a problem. And then have a consequence at home. True story, when I was a preschooler, my aunt marched us all into the grocery store, and I saw a bag of candy, and it was ripped open, and there was candy on the floor. And at 4 years old, I know the stuff on the floor gets thrown away. So it's like, hey, I'll take it. And I started shoving it into my pockets. We all get into the car, 6 little kids crammed into a station wagon. And so as I'm chomping on this candy, the sweet smell of sugar is going through the car. And the kid next to me is like, hey, what are you eating? Candy. Where'd you get it? On the floor. You got any more? I had pockets full. It's like, Aunt Dolores, Patty Jo stole a bunch of candy. She stopped the car, ripped the door open, checked my pockets, told me how wrong it was for me to steal, but it was on the floor. It doesn't matter if it's on the floor. You never, ever, ever take anything out of a store without paying for it. Went back to the store, marched me into the store owner. I had to empty my pockets. I'm, of course, blubbering, crying. I'm feeling so repentant, and I promised to never, ever do it again. And he tells me why it's wrong, and he thanks me for being honest and coming in, and guess what? I never ever stole again. So parents, be effective. Make your kids own the problem, own the consequences, let them fix it, and let them have the value that they get from it. Okay, cope. The more we can help our children to cope, the better choices they're going to make. They're going to be more resilient. They're going to bounce back. So yes, life's going to throw them off balance, but they won't stay stuck there. Giving our children coping skills helps them to be resilient. Connect. The more healthy our connections with each child, to each of their caregivers, and to other adults, and to their community, their school, it's going to change their lives. So helping our child connect and being well connected with our child, they will learn to give and receive in a way that encourages bonding within themselves, within their families, and within their greater world. And then select. The more a child selects behavior that matches their role, and roles change, just like clothing, the greater the chance of healthy decisions, the greater the chance of success in school and in life. And I have to tell you, this is an area that's really lacking if you talk to people in the school system, this ability to select appropriate behavior. If you can teach this to your child is going to be remarkable, extraordinary. They will say, that child there, they understand. So the best control is self-control. And really the only control that really works is self-control. So we're going to put our tools in our toolbox. We're going to lay down our tools for just a minute and take another mini break. And so I'm going to ask you, how are you doing? Are you, mom and dad and grandma and caregivers and foster parents and whoever you are? You know, if you went into the doctor's today and you said you were feeling stressed and overwhelmed, the doctor's going to look at three things. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well, as in choosing fresh fruits, vegetables, proteins? And are you exercising, which is one way that our body detoxes. We process stress out of our body when we exercise and use our large muscles. So are you exercising every day? And then are you having a little fun every day? Even under COVID, are you finding ways to have fun? Children need all of this, but you do too. So take a moment while you're thinking about being your best self. Is this an area that I need to take a look at? What are some free fun activities? And there's lots of things you can do if you want to pay money, but there's a bunch of things you can do if you want free activities. So check out your local parks, make it a point to go to each of them, map them out, collect things, hide things, do some geo-mapping. There's all kinds of fun things. I said free, so board game, cards, or dice, dollar store. $1 for a deck of cards or dice, and you can Google literally hundreds of games that you can play with these once you have your $1 pack of cards or dice. Play flashlight tag in the dark, stay up late, look at the stars, read a book together. It may sound boring, and I know in our blended family, it took a little while for us to get used to family reading with just my new mom reading to the rest of the family, but we got to really looking forward to it. We had to learn that we liked this. Try a new recipe and let everyone help. And if you're on a low budget, you can get a cake mix, but the idea is let them put in the eggs, let them put in the water, let them stir it, let them watch the beauty of making something happen. Learn a new dance via a web video. They're free. If you want to learn a new dance, even as a family, line up. And it's fun to learn dances, and it's fun to make mistakes and then see progress and get better. Do a kind deed for someone. Believe it or not, parents, you have power. Research proves it. Now, your children may tell you you don't have power. They're lying to you. Ignore it and keep doing your best parenting thing using your 3 parenting tools. They may plug their ears. They may seem not to get the message. I have found with teenagers, sometimes it takes 3 months or 6 months for an idea to go from their ear to their brain to action. So, but just get started and plant the seeds and they will grow eventually. Parental expectations make a difference. What you're telling your children that you expect from them regarding drug use, alcohol use, and vaping, if you tell them, we've talked about this, you know why it's not good for you, you know why you don't need it, and so I expect no experimentation and no use with this. Only 5% of children whose parents expected them to stay completely clear of these things, only 5% were actually using. And of the parents who said, okay, I'm real. I understand. All the kids are doing drugs and alcohol and vaping. So I know you're going to experiment a little bit. I don't want you to, make it a habit, but I know that this is something you're going to try. Of those children, 31% were using those products. So think about it, parents. Believe it or not, your expectations, your voiced expectations make a difference. So make the choice, parents, to accept the responsibility to nurture, to grow your children, and to protect them. And you are not responsible for the outcomes. It's a partnership. Parenting is like you're building a brick wall. You, the parent, put up 2 bricks. Sometimes you'll have one of your children, they'll add 2 bricks. And in that relationship, it goes pretty good. Other children, you put up 2 bricks, they take 1 down. You hope that later, as you keep putting up your 2 bricks, you hope eventually they decide to put up a brick or 2. But you keep doing the right thing no matter what your children choose to do. More on connection. Again, when I feel connected to someone, I feel like they accept me. They respect me. They understand me, and then because I know they care, now I care about what they know. How to strengthen my relationship with my child. Stories build relationships. Stories help people care. Let's demonstrate that. Just briefly, when I moved to North Carolina, I came from Michigan, started working at a newspaper. My editor, John Staples, wanted me to win the Community Service Award for the newspaper. And I was green, I was new. And I didn't have a Southern accent. Everybody knew I wasn't part of this community. And so they didn't want to hear an outsider come in. But the Community Service Award, if I could pick a real problem, get the community to join together and actually attack that problem, we could win this state Community Service Award, which is like the gold medal in Olympics for newspapers. I chose tackling the teenage drug problem, which of course is the basis for my book and all the research and what I learned about kids and families. Okay, well, what I found out is the people wouldn't listen to me, so I had to quickly find a way, how can I connect to the public so I can get them to pull together to solve the problem? So we have me, who they are not going to listen to, and I have the community. I use the stories of their children to connect me and them so we could get busy solving this problem. And you know what? It worked. They would read and listen to and believe their own teens. We did end up winning the Community Service Award. Better yet, we won the community. We started a program called Caregivers Cares for Kids, and still going strong today. Connection, a powerful tool. We could not have done it without it. President Abraham Lincoln, how did he become president? He used stories to connect himself to the voters, and then he used stories to navigate America through some of its toughest times in history. Stories are powerful connection tools. Me, you didn't know me from anybody. I've told you several stories about my childhood and my life, and we are now connected, the Johnson County parents and caregivers and myself, through stories. So again, we're looking at this also, these steps are in your free PDF. And so we're going to look at the one, take an interest in their interest. True story. Put your money where your mouth is, Patty Joe. Oh my goodness. Several years ago, my 13-year-old grandson was brought to me against his will. So his parents were not able to keep him safe. He was placed in the care of myself and my husband for 2 years. And now he becomes my responsibility. And I'm thinking, he doesn't want to be there. He's angry. And frankly, I raised my kids. I don't want to raise an angry 13-year-old kid who was in trouble. So I'm thinking, what is the fastest way I can connect with this child? So now let's see if all these tools work. Well, the first thing I did is I looked for what's right. What can I grow? What does he love? What's he doing right? And about the only thing I could find he was doing right is he loved music. Unfortunately, he loved the worst music of all. And the kind of music that he loved was a rapper. And this rapper was the most obscene, violent, hateful person I had ever heard. And he's listening to this in my house. Now I have 2 choices. One thing I can do is go into command authoritative mode and say, not in my house, you keep that garbage out of my house, and I could have shut it down. I chose to use this one thing as a way to start a connection, to take an interest in his interest. Next thing I did was gave him some control. I asked a question. I asked him, what do you like about this guy? Because I Googled him, I read the lyrics, and it's like, do you know what this guy's really saying? What do you like about him? And his answer shocked me. He said he never gave up. And I thought, cool, I can work with that. He never gave up. I can find other positive role models of people who never gave up. Looking to build a little bigger bridge. In the cars, we're going to anger management classes and drug abuse classes and these various things that he by law are mandated to go to. We spent a lot of time in the car. And I said, let's make a deal. I'll listen to one of your songs if you'll listen to one of mine. So we'd listen to one of his songs. I'd have to wade through all this obscenities and horrible stuff. But then he'd listen to one of mine, and we'd listen to Kenny Rogers' The Gambler, we'd listen to Lean on Me, we'd listen to Flight of the Bumblebee, The Lemon Tree, anything with a nice little story or upbeat music. And so we do this several hours a week, actually. So we're bonding even more. He's seeing a little more of my world, I'm seeing a little more of his world. Next thing. Looking at the big picture, and I'm trying to ignore his bad behavior as I'm building this connection. And so I asked him, he had a guitar, he loved music. I said, would you like lessons? He said, yes. So I helped him build a long-term relationship with a guitar teacher. I think it might have cost me $12 or $15 a week for a half-hour lesson. Well worth the investment. So Bob helped him make a lot of healthy connections. He introduced him to hundreds of music styles and different artists. So my grandson would actually come home and he'd say, hey, Nana, you ever hear of Eric Clapton? I'm not sure. Why don't you put him on and let's listen to him? Of course, I heard of Eric Clapton. Nana, you ever heard of Ray Charles? You ever hear Stevie Ray Vaughan? And so again, we're building positive time with each other. And then his music teacher gave him a music making program. It was free. And so he'd hook up his keyboard to his computer and he'd get this synthetic music going. And he made these 3-minute beats. And they sounded like classical music. I absolutely love them. And I could look him right in the eyes and say, man, I love that. He'd say, Nana, what do you think of this one? And I'd say, well, you know, it sounds kind of happy. Reminds me of just like a butterfly floating on the wind. He'd say, what do you think of this one? I said, well, it sounds a little sad. Are you feeling were you trying to get kind of a sad feeling going here? You can see how this bonding is opening up our communication big time. I was able to minimize my judgmental thoughts, my authoritarian approach. I had to minimize that so that I could feel the love and the care on whatever level he was able to offer me. Within 2 years, he changed from an angry young man to an authentic young man. He changed from danger to safety. He went from harmful music to wholesome music. And best of all, he went from a hurt young man to a whole young man. Today, you know, he's been to college, has his own apartment, he doesn't ask me for money, he's living a life he loves. Success. Now, how can you apply this to your child? Take an interest in their interest. Find out why they like something before you shut it down. So you may see them dressing a certain way or being pulled toward a certain type of music or a certain peer group. Before you just shut it down, use it as a clue. That's telling you something about them. Accept them where they're at so that you can guide them to where they need to be. Okay, and our last one, ask their opinion about a story and then listen. My grandson came to me with one emotion, anger, anger, frustration, mad, guilt, blame, shame, all of those negative emotions, and they were all wadded up inside of him, and he didn't have any room for positive emotions. And all his emotional wires were crossed. What is emotional literacy? The ability to identify how you feel and to communicate it to others. Emotional literacy. I need to know how I feel and know how to communicate it to others. How did I teach him this? I actually had done all the research. I'd written the book before he came into my life. And so in this book, for instance, are the top 10 stressors of young people. Let's take a quick poll. Guess what the top number 1 of the 10 stressors is for young people? Becky, can we have that poll?
I'd love to give you that poll, but I don't have poll 8. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. All right. Well, let me read you the choices. So the choices to the poll are a number 1 stressor, romantic relationship problems, family problems, bullying problems, or school problems. Interestingly, science says number 1 stressor of young people is family problems. They may act like they don't care, but it's eating them alive inside. What the book does is it has peer-to-peer learning, so other young people who've dealt with the stress, what it felt like, how they resolved it, their true stories, they normalize the experience because teens They may not know how they feel. Like my grandson did not know how he felt. And yet when he heard a teenager's words, he could say, oh yeah, that is how I feel. So emotional literacy, again, helping them identify how they feel, communicate it to others. I want to read just one story because we are winding down here. And this is in the back of the book, and it's called Katie's Story. And these stories are not 10-minute stories. They're 1-minute stories, 2-minute stories. I read this story to my grandson. Katie remembers the day her parents said they were getting a divorce. It totally turned my world upside down. I'd never known anything but mom and dad always being together. My brother and I blamed ourselves. We asked, what did we do? We were angry. It took years for me to learn to let go of that pain. Now, what's interesting is Katie was 28 years old with a fully developed set of coping skills when her parents divorced, and this is how she felt it, and this is how most children feel when their parents divorce or split. So what I did then is I asked him this question, which is also, everything I'm showing you is all printed in the book. It says, did you know that most children of divorce blame themselves for their parents' divorce? And my grandson, he didn't know that most kids blame themselves. And the question is, why do you think that happens? Now, the next question is, what could Katie have done to prevent her parents' divorce? And my grandson was thinking about that, and it's like, wow, so she was an adult. She wasn't even living in their house. She blamed herself. She couldn't have done anything to prevent it. And that, looking through the window of her life, helped him shine the light in his own heart and realize, I've been blaming myself for my parents' divorce since I was 11, and there was nothing I could have done to prevent it, and healing occurred. Now, we also went on to discuss empathy. Someone once said, empathy is me carrying your pain in my heart. Many young people feel pain at the loss of their first family, living with both biological parents. How can you demonstrate empathy for these peers? So maybe your child's a fortunate one, being raised with both biological parents, but the majority of their peers are not. How can they have some empathy? Or if your child is being raised by only one biological parent, how can they go out and educate all their friends? Hey guys, you know what? It's not our fault. It's not our fault our parents aren't living together. And they actually have to verbalize this. It's not my fault. And the healing begins. There's an active listening exercise in here where we actually repeat back. When Katie said, my brother and I blamed ourselves, an active listener might say, you mean you felt it was your fault? So active listening isn't solving the problem, it's only helping to reflect light on the problem. So that's just one example. My grandson and I actually read the entire book, and by the end of the day, the end of the 6 months to a year, he actually had gained very good emotional literacy. It helped my grandson heal. It helped him make a healthy connection with himself. So he had to get his own wiring straight. Then he could connect better with his family, his community. So parenting really does make a difference. We have a little time for questions and answers, but before we do that, I want to say this one last thing. I know that you are excited to get started using your tools. And I've actually had people, parents, teachers, police officers, who've been through a training similar to this. They go down to the hardware and they buy these 3 tools and they keep them close so they remember, hold on, I blew it the way I handled that. I need to keep remembering, put the level on my own head. So what I want you to realize as you start to use these things, you realize that this is a process. So just like when you start a new diet or a new exercise plan, it's not a quick fix. It's a process, but over time, I guarantee you, you will see results. Also realize that your family may push against this. Maybe if I resist enough, mom will let it go. Maybe it's just a fad with her. Don't do it. Don't quit. Because really, you're using these 3 tools to make you a better parent so you can do your job better. It's not about changing your child. It's about changing you. And if your child changes, that's a bonus. And then the last thing, remember, you can only change yourself. You can't change other people, but when you change yourself, your world will shift. So it's my hope, here's the big payoff, that every day you look in the mirror and you say, I'm going to use my tools today. My tools are making me a better parent and a better person in all my relationships. I am changing my world. So thank you very much. And now we'll entertain some questions.
Thank you so much, Patty Jo. So if our viewers out there, if you have a question for Patty Jo or want a story or an anecdote, feel free to either toss it in the chat box. I am monitoring the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself and participate in that fashion. Patty Jo, as I was listening and monitoring the chat box, I had a few questions that were sent to me privately, but I'd like to open it up for the greater good at this point in time before I get to these specific couple of questions.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and ask. One of the ones that came across my desk was, and I'll get to that eventually, I'm assuming. I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 4-year-old at home. But this particular person asked me, how can I help my child deal with peer pressure?
Okay, that is an excellent question. And again, with our children, if we're well connected, we don't have to give them a lecture. We can usually give them a pretty brief answer. And one way that I like to think of peer pressure is this. Peer pressure is like a river. And the truth is there's good peer pressure and there's harmful peer pressure. And the pressure that we are going to experience in life depends on who we decide to connect with as our friends at school, in our neighborhood. When we connect with friends who are going our way, they share our same values, we're in that river, and the peer pressure is pushing us that if we start to get off track, usually our friends who have our same values will say, oh, hey, what are you doing? We're going this way. And our friends will help us to be our best selves. Now, if out of curiosity or whatever reason, I choose to connect with someone who's going the other way. Now for me to be in that peer group that I've put myself in, for me to then do what I know is good and right is going to be like swimming upstream. Have you ever tried to swim upstream? Most of us cannot do it for very long. And then we finally kind of just give up and go with the flow. So a lot of peer pressure, first and foremost, has to do with who we choose to connect with. Now, it does not have to do with where we live or who's at school, because at school, there are good associates, we'll call them healthy associates, and unhealthy associates. I can be surrounded by unhealthy associates, but if I don't choose to connect and bond with them, they're not influencing me. I'm most influenced by who I open my heart to, by who I choose to bond with. The other thing that parents can do that's very, very helpful, you can Google this. There are 10 answers in my book that work, how to respond to peer pressure in a way that works and is still cool. And so one thing is we can role play and say, you know, if someone like one of your friends maybe gets a little crazy and they want you to try a vape, you know, what could you say? And so there are some answers, like one of the answers is, no thanks, I'm good. Very easy. No thanks, I'm good. And people will respect that. Now, if they say, my mommy says I shouldn't, they're going to be all over that child. Yeah, because that's not a powerful, that's not a I'm making my decision, I'm making my stand. That's a very weak answer, but a very strong answer. No thanks, I'm good. You're not disrespecting the other person. Another one that works really well. What? You know me better than that. Don't even ask me that. You know what that does is it gets our friend to say, wow, so maybe, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be doing this without disrespecting them. Another thing, sometimes no response is needed. But what we want to do is find answers that work, answers they're comfortable with, and then role play at home. So what if on the way home is from school, someone offers you this? And again, we are most influenced by the people we allow ourselves to be connected to. We're a little influenced by the people we want to be in their group, but we need to ask ourselves, are they really going my way? So that is my best answer to that. I'd like to just put in one thing that I didn't cover while we have just a minute here, and that is, how can you as a caregiver figure out how likely your child is to make self-destructive decisions? And this is very, very important because as parents, we want to know this. Here's the answer. What are your child's coping skills? How many healthy coping skills does your child have? These are things they do when they feel frustrated or hurt or sad. What do they do to make themselves feel better? their coping skills are punching a wall or saying obscenities, obviously they go in the high risk category for self-destructive decisions. Yeah. So we want to teach our children as many healthy coping skills as possible, healthy coping skills. The other thing we can look at is, how are their connections? How connected is my child and resolved okay with each biological parent? And then what other connections do they have? Do they have healthy connections to grandparents, aunts, uncles, neighbors, coaches, ministers, any other people? How healthy? The more connections they have, the lower their risk for self-destructive decisions. And then, do they know the rules and the roles? Are they children that tend to resist authority? Why should I listen to you? Or are they people who look at people in authority as, hey, great, you may have an answer for me. You probably have been through this before. Looking at the way that they relate to cope, connect, control helps you evaluate their risk for self-destructive decisions. And then you know what areas you need to work at to shore them up to where they become very low risk for self-destructive decisions. Okay, Becky, another question?
Yes, and Patty Jo, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. It is 12:02, but there's one more that just came across that I know many of us in the caring and helping profession may experience this. So I want to throw this out to you, and then we'll wrap it up. For those that can stay, great, stay, and we can continue to ask Patty Jo questions. But this came across. Many of the kids I work with are in their early teens.
Okay.
Habits that have been created are very difficult to change. And so many of the parents feel hopeless. What kind of advice or guidance would you give those parents who think it's more trouble than it's worth to try to discipline their kids?
Okay. Well, and so what we're talking about is non-compliant youth. And so on the one hand, we want to educate the parents with the fact that there are 3 tools that can build a relationship to where they're going to have the greatest influence and life isn't going to be a battle. But there is the other part of this, and that is the consequence. And I have to say that when my grandson was living with me, sometimes he would refuse to do something. And so then it was no longer trying to help him cope or trying to connect or trying to help him select. You know what it was then? It was discipline. And parents sometimes forget that they have all the power. Parents, you have the car. You have the food. You have everything that child needs. You own that house. You own all the screens. So what I did with my grandson is when he refused to do something like, I'm not doing my homework. It's like, well, that's okay. So until you do your homework, you will be eating oatmeal. And after eating oatmeal for maybe a whole day, maybe 2 days, and I'm, of course, cooking all the regular food, he decided, okay, I'll do my homework. And so I know with other children, sometimes the parents actually, you know what? Yes, we're going to keep a roof over your head, but nobody says you have to have a bedroom with a bed in it. And they actually make them earn their possessions back. They actually say, let's see what life can be like when you don't. And if they're being uncooperative and it's like, hey, can you take me to my friends? It's like, no, why not? Because you didn't comply with this. And so you comply with this, then we can talk about you having a privilege. So it does pay off, but parents have to realize they have more power. So just yelling at your child, that's not power. You actually need to take an action, take a consequence, take something away from them. Do you have to feed your child? Yes. Do you have to feed them things they like? No. If they want things they like, they need to comply. Do you have to take them places? No, you own the car. They can sit home if they don't want to comply. So I don't know, I hope that answers it, that parents need to realize they have power, and it's more power than just having discussions. They actually can change the physical environment of their child until their child understands the parent has the power. And the parent only has the power if the parent chooses to exercise the power. And most children, once they realize it's for real, mom and dad or grandma or whoever is really taking charge, they fall into line. That is generally what happens.
Well, thank you so much, Patty Jo. This has been enlightening. It has been helpful. The resources have been fantastic. I know our community members out there are will be extremely appreciative of getting that PDF that'll get emailed to them. So for everybody that's signed up, even if you weren't able to make it, again, number one, you'll be getting that PDF from us come Monday. And then we will have this actually up on our YouTube channel. And we will be able to, you'll be able to replay this video at your convenience. Share it out to friends and family, share it out to people that may have missed it, or people that you feel may benefit from it. So thank you all for taking the time on a Saturday morning, 2 hours out of your day. Patty Jo, we thank you. We are so appreciative of your supporting us and being able, joining us today. We're so grateful.
Thank you. So I can stay on for a few minutes for those who, if there are more questions.